Hi everyone, this is Ashish from Edureka, and today we are going to learn how to build a mean stack application from scratch. So before moving ahead, let us discuss the agenda for today's session. So we'll start with what is a mean application. Then we'll talk about MongoDB, Express, Angular 2 and Node.js. Basically, mean is an acronym for MongoDB, Express, Angular 2 and Node.js. So we'll be talking about all these four technologies. Then we'll talk about CRUD operation, and at last we'll start building our application, which is contact list mean app. So are we clear with the agenda, guys? So let us start with very first topic of today's session, which is what is a mean application. Mean stack refers to a collection of JavaScript based technologies used to develop web application. So from client to server to database, everything will be based on JavaScript. If you see the diagram, which shows a simple client server architecture that will be following in our main application. If you see there, you will find Angular 2 that we'll be using for our client-side development. Then we will be using Express, which is based on Node.js for our server-side development. And at last, we'll be using MongoDB as our database. So this is the architecture that we'll be following. So let us talk about these four technologies, starting with MongoDB. So MongoDB is an open source schema-less NoSQL database system. So if you are working on MongoDB, you will be working on collections and documents. A collection is a group of documents, whereas document is a set of key value pairs. You can refer to a collection as that of a table in RDBMS system. So basically all the data that we'll be working on inside MongoDB will be in the form of key and values. MongoDB saves data in binary JSON format, which makes it easier to pass data between client and server. Now let us talk about Express, which is our next framework in our list. So I have a quick question coming here. Which other database can we use with Express? Okay, man, since we are building a mean stack app, that is why we are going ahead with MongoDB. But yeah, of course, you can go ahead with other database as well and integrate with your Express framework. Let me show you the documentation so that you can know all those databases which are there and can be integrated with Express. You go to expressjs.com, guide, database integration. So these are the databases that we can integrate with our Express framework. You can go ahead with Cassandra, which is also a NoSQL database. You can go ahead with MySQL. We are working on MongoDB right now. You can go ahead with SQLite, which is also used in Android apps. So these are the databases that you can work with your Express framework. So I hope your doubt is clear, Mank. Okay, so let's get back to our topic. So next in our list is Express. So Express is a lightweight framework used to build web application based on Node.js. It provides you a set of robust features which you can use to build single page application as well as multi-page application. The idea of Express came from Sinatra, which is a very popular framework based on Ruby. So basically Express provides you boilerplate by encapsulating the functionalities of Node.js so that the whole app building process becomes easier and fast. Now let us talk about Angular 2. Using Angular 2, you can make applications for your mobile as well as your desktop. Angular 2 is by far the most popular JavaScript framework available today. And with the introduction of TypeScript, Angular 2 is bringing a true object-oriented web development into mainstream. So we'll be using our interface through which our client will be interacting using Angular 2. So at last, let us talk about Node.js. So Node.js is a server-side JavaScript execution environment built on Google Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine. It follows an event-driven architecture where there is a single thread mechanism to process your events. An event can be clicking a button or filling a form in a website. So all these events are then sent back to your server for processing, and then the server, after the processing is done, generates the response. The processing of these events are done asynchronously. That is, if we have multiple events in our event queue, our Node server doesn't wait for a particular event to complete. So it can process or serve multiple requests at the same time. So this very whole event-driven architecture makes our Node.js server highly optimized and scalable. So I hope guys you have a clear overview of all the technologies that we'll be using in our mean stack app. So now let us talk about CRUD operation. CRUD is an acronym that stands for create, read, update and delete. So basically these four operations will be performed on our database. So we'll be using post method for inserting new data into our database, We'll be using get for retrieving data from our database. We'll be using put for modifying or updating any data that is there in our database. And at last, we'll be using delete method for deleting resources or deleting any data that is there in our database. So we will be implementing all of these 4 functionalities or operations using RESTful APIs. That we'll be learning while building our whole application. So guys, let us start with building our application. Before that, we need to install MongoDB and Node.js locally into our system. So let us go ahead and do that. So for installing Node.js, you need to visit this website called nodejs.org. Go to the download section. Then according to your operating system, choose the correct installer and download it. So I'm gonna go ahead with Windows. So basically installing Node.js or MongoDB in your system is pretty easy. You just have to go through setup, click a bunch of next buttons and specify your location where you want to install it, or go with the default, and that's it. So my download is complete. I'm gonna run installer. I have already downloaded and installed Node.js in my system, so I'm not gonna install it, but I'm gonna show you the procedure or way to do it. It's pretty easy. And then we're gonna install MongoDB. I think I have also installed MongoDB in my system, but I'll tell you how to do that. So specify your location here, then click on next, next, and then finally install. So once your installation is completed, click the finish button and open the Node.js command prompt. So basically, we'll be using this command prompt, Node.js command prompt, to build our entire project. So let's check out the Node version. Then you can go ahead and check out the NPM version. NPM stands for Node Package Manager, which is there for managing your dependencies and their versions. So whatever dependencies you need to run your application or for your project, you're going to use NPM to manage that. Now let us install MongoDB into our system. So you go to mongodb.com, you click on download. Then again, as per your operating system, choose the correct installer. I'm going to go ahead with this very version and I'm going to download the MSI. It's a big file, 148 MB, so I have already downloaded it. So I'm not going to go ahead with the download. You have to run this setup. Click on next. I have MongoDB already installed in my system, so I'm gonna remove it first, then I can show you the installation. I could have done that with Node.js as well, but it's pretty same. Like, you just have to click bunch of next, you have to specify your path, and that's it. I have uninstalled it, then go next, agree, next. I want complete, install. You can go ahead with the custom options as well, where you can specify the location and other configurations, but I'm going to go ahead with the default mode or the complete installation. And the MongoDB files will be installed in my program files. If you're using Windows, then you can go ahead and check out that. So I'm going to show you that once the installation has been completed. Yeah, so click on finish. Your file will be installed by default in your program files. If you're using Windows, go to MongoDB server 3.4 bin. So this is where your all the files reside in your system. Now for running your MongoDB service, for example, whenever you are creating a main app, you need to run the MongoDB service so that you can make connection to it and perform data operations. So for that, what you can do is go to docs in mongodb.com, because you will get the whole procedure or step-by-step process to do that. Go to MongoDB server, installation, MongoDB Community Edition, Windows. We have already completed this very step, that is install MongoDB Community Edition. Now we need to run this MongoDB service. So for that, we need to create 2 directories called as data and 1 subdirectory as DB. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll open command prompt. Okay, let me delete the data file because I had MongoDB already installed in my system. So I'm going to delete it. So yeah, DB has been created. Now the next step is to tell MongoDB that this is the path where my database data or data for the database will be residing. I'm going to copy this command and I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to change my path, which is C and / data. That's it. So my connection has been started, my service has been started, and it's waiting for connections on port 27017, which is the default port for MongoDB to connect. If in case, like if you go ahead with this very step and it doesn't work out, then you have to execute the mongod.exe, which is the third step. You can do that as well. So we have MongoDB ready and Node.js ready. So now we need to create our project. So I'm going to go ahead and start building my application. For that, I'm going to go to my project directory, which is in D drive. Yeah. So I'm going to make a folder where I'll be putting all my source code, server side as well as my client side. So let's name it as the name of our application, which is contact list. Now I'm going to use npm init command to build my project as well as create package.json file, which will contain all my dependencies and their version. So you go ahead with npm init. It will ask you your project name, version, description of the project that you're building. Simple mean application. Entry point is the file from where your server-side execution will start. So let's name it as app.js. You can go ahead with index.js as well. I always use app.js, so it's up to you to name whatever you want to name that file. You can do that. You can put your name as author. I'm going to put mine right now. So let's open this folder or project. Okay, I have already opened in my VS Code. So I'm going to use VS Code as an editor. You can use any editor of your choice. So this is your package.json file, which contains all the information regarding projects. We haven't installed any dependencies yet. That's why you're not seeing any dependencies or anything like that. We're going to go ahead and do that. So for that, I'm going to use the command npm install. So for installing any dependency or module, you use npm install command followed by the name of that particular module, which is express. Then you can use -- save flag. In that way, whatever dependencies or modules you are installing, it will be written to your package.json file. So I have installed my Express, and you can see over here in the dependencies section, we have Express of version 4.15.2 and O. So this is how you do things. So now if you want to share your project with your friend or colleague, so you don't need to send the entire project along with the dependencies. So you just need to send them the source code and this package.json file so that they can download the dependencies or install the dependencies and start working with your project. You can also install multiple dependencies or modules, or at the same time, what I mean to say is using a single command. Install, go ahead with mongoose, and then we need cors, we need body parser. So mongoose is an object document mapper for using MongoDB, and body parser is used for parsing the incoming JSON data, and cors is for because we'll be having our server code running at port 3000, whereas our client-side code run on 4200, port 4200. So that's why we need to enable cors so that we don't get an error, which is not allowed by default. Now, as I told earlier, we have our entry point file called app.js from where our server-side execution will start. So we'll start server-side code by making that very file or creating that very file in the first place. So we'll go ahead and do that. App.js. Then what we'll do, we will import the modules or dependencies that we need to build our project or our server-side code. So importing modules. So first we need Express. We need Mongoose. We need body parser. We need cores. And we need path. We haven't installed path because it's one of the core modules. So you don't need to install it separately. Now for making a Express application or using Express, we need to use Express method and assign it to some variable. So we'll assign it to app. Okay, now we need to define a port number. Now we need to bind our server with this port. So this is a callback. You can go ahead and I'm using arrow function. You can use function as well, the JavaScript function. After a successful connection, we want to say that server started at port, concatenate the port number. Now what we need to do is we need to add a route so that if we go to localhost 3000, then we need to specify our server what it needs to render for that home page route. We'll write testing server because we're gonna later on create all our routes in a separate file called route.js or something like that, so that all our routes are in particular file and it's not in our app.js file. For creating route, you need to use get method. For example, like this is how I'm defining a route, and the route is for my home page. That's why I'm using slash. And the next argument is request response res.send. Now let's go ahead and run our server. For that, you need to execute node space your entry point file name. So our server has been started. Let's go ahead and check that. So we have a foo bar. So everything is running fine now. So remember I told you that I want all my routes to be in a particular folder. So I'm going to create a folder called routes. Or we can simply put it in a file because it's a simple application. So we'll do that. Or we can create a folder as well. Route.js. Now we want to use this very particular folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define this particular file with a variable. So const, I'm going to use route where we need outs slash. Now we need to use it. So I want all my paths which is preceding with slash contact or slash API or slash ABCD to be forwarded to that very particular file. So for that, for example, I want it to be slash API. So all the routes with slash API slash ABC, let's say, will be directed to my route.js file, and where I have defined what to do with that particular route call. For example, I'm having slash API slash add contact for adding the contact. So whenever a client needs to add contact, it will make a call to this very API slash add contact. And I would be defining my logic for adding contact to my database over there in my route.js file beside that very particular route, that is slash API slash add contact. So that's how things work, guys. So we need to define route so that we can make call to it and we can perform our data operation. So for now, this is the reason that we are making the routes. So it's done. Now we need to add our middleware so that we can parse our data and we can use cores. So let's go ahead and do that. Adding middleware. So we need cores. We need body parser as well. So we want to parse our JSON data. Let's add routes. And we need to do one more thing. We want all our static files to be in a particular folder. So for that, I'm going to create a folder called public. And inside that, I'm going to create my file index.html, which will be rendered by our front-end application. So static files. Path.join. Basically, I'm defining the path here. You can directly go and specify the path of this folder, public folder, or you can use __dir name, which will point to your current directory, and you want to join it with public. So guys, we are done here. Now let's create some route. So we need to bring express. You can use const or var, whatever you want, but in general, we use const because the value of express is not going to change. I mean, the value of variable express is not going to change in our code. Same with router, we're going to use express routers. Remember, I told you that we'll be adding routes here. So whatever call I'm making to slash API, which is there, let me show you, slash API slash contacts, it will be directed to this very particular .get method. Request response and next. Now this is my slash contacts folder. So, and I'm going to use this very route for retrieving the contact list. Okay, so every time you make changes to your server-side code, you need to restart your server. Or what you can do, you can go ahead and install NodeMon which will continuously watch your source code files for any changes. So whenever there is a change, it will restart your server on its own. So we're going to do that. Now you go ahead with nodemon command to start your server. So we are getting an error. So whenever you are creating a route, you need to export your router as well. So basically what it does, it goes to your package.json file, and where it finds the nodemon that our main entry point file is app.js, and finally it starts the server using this very particular file. So if you see over here, the same command that we used to execute for starting our server, node app.js, has been used by nodemon. Now if I go ahead with /API/contacts, see, we can have the data. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna connect to our database, and then here we're gonna write our logic for retrieving data from our database, and that's how we will send data to our client-side application, which will make a call to this very particular API and retrieve the list of contact. We need few more methods. For example, it's for retrieving data. We need a method to add data, add contact. For that, we'll be using post method. Then we need a method for deleting contact. Pretty similar, the syntax or the signature of these methods. So how I'm gonna delete a particular contact is by referring to that very particular contact using its ID. So it's done. Now what we need to create schema for our contact that will be inserted into our database, and we need to make connection to our database. So we're gonna make a folder called models. Inside that we need a file contacts.js. So this very particular file will be having all our schema, our contact schema. So that is the reason I am making this file. So we need to bring in Mongoose for, since we are going to make schema for MongoDB. So we need to bring Mongoose, through which we'll be talking to MongoDB, or through that we'll be using our MongoDB database. Contact schema, Mongoose schema. So this is a function, and I'm gonna pass the schema that I'm going to use for my contact. So I'm going to go ahead with first name and last name. Type string. Required true. Then we need last name. Let's make it required also. You can make it false as well, but since it's a demo, so I'm going to go ahead with true. Last field will be for contact number or phone number. So let's keep it string only. Now we need to export this very schema. So it's done. Now what we need is we need to create connection, or we need to connect to our MongoDB. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So we have Mongoose already here. So now for connection, we'll be using mongoose.connect function. So let's go ahead and do that. Connect to MongoDB. Mongoose.connect. Then we need to pass the URL along with port number through which we're gonna connect to our MongoDB. So it is MongoDB localhost 27017. So we're gonna go ahead with our default port. Now on successful connection, we need to display a message that the connection has been established successfully. On connection, we need to say mongoose.connection.on connected. Then we want to say that connected to database MongoDB at, that's it. Now in case of error, suppose we have an error while doing the connection or while establishing the connection. If error, we need to know that what is the error that we are having. Print some message as well. Error database connection. We don't need this. So it's done. I think now we can check out if we have made the successful connection or not. So we have been connected to our database at port 27017. Now what we need to do is create APIs for retrieving contacts or adding contact to our database or deleting contact from our database. So you're going to do that. So first we need to bring the schema, the contact schema that we have created in our contacts.js file. Now for retrieving contact, we're going to use find method or function. Then we're going to pass a callback. So this is one other way to define a callback or function the JavaScript way. Res.json contact. So after retrieving the contact, all the contact or the contact list will be saved in our contacts variable, which we are sending or responding back to our client in JSON format. Now we need our post. So first what we need to create a new contact which will be adding to our database. So I'm going to make an object new contact and it's equal to new contact. It will be of type contact. Name. I want my first name to be from my request body dot first name, then last name. So it will be last. Then we need phone number. That's it, guys. Now we want to insert this very new contact into our database. So for that, we're going to use a new contact dot save, and we need a callback. Let's go ahead with the arrow function. Error. If error, we need to send, or we want to send message fail to add contact. Else contact added successfully. That's it, guys. Now for delete, what I'm trying to show you is that if you're inserting any data into your database, what our MongoDB does, it creates an ID for each document or each contact. So using that very particular ID, we're gonna refer to that particular contact which we want to delete, and we'll perform our delete operation. So that's how we want to do things. So from client side, we'll be receiving that very particular request for deleting a particular contact. Then using that very ID, we're gonna issue our delete command. So contact dot remove. Now, as I said, we need to retrieve the ID. This ID and then a callback. If error, else. That's it, guys. So our delete method has been added to our route file successfully. So we have 3 methods now. Later on, we will also add our update method. So it's done. We have no error or no issues. Now for checking our APIs, we're gonna use Postman, which is a Chrome extension, which you can add to your web browser, Chrome browser, and go ahead and check your APIs. We're gonna go with Postman, Chrome. Here you will get an option for adding it to your browser or to your Chrome. Now, first of all, we need to insert some data so that we can fetch it. So, go ahead with our post method. Then we want our header as content type to be JSON. Then we need to send raw data. So, first name, Bruce. Last name, Wayne. Then phone number. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead with string, but yeah, let's add some random number here. Now you have to enter the URL or the URL of the API that we're gonna make the call to so that it can be directed to that particular post method. So we're gonna go ahead with localhost 3000 slash API slash contact. So contact added successfully. Let's add some more contact. Peter. Now let us retrieve the contacts that we have already added into our database. For that, we'll be using API slash contact. So we have these two contacts. So that's what I was talking about. You can see over here, we haven't added any ID field while inserting our contact. So this is automatically generated by MongoDB, and this is what we are referring to in our delete method. So what we're gonna do is copy this very particular ID. Now we're gonna issue a delete command. So now our method will fetch this very particular ID from our URL, and it will refer to that very particular document or that very particular contact and delete it. So the contact has been deleted. Now let's check that. We are having issues here. So we can see that our Peter Parker has been deleted. So this is how you can check your APIs. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna make our client application, and where we will be making call to our APIs for performing various kind of data operations that we have defined in our server file or server-side code. So that's it, guys. Our server-side code is complete. Now we're gonna go ahead with our client-side application using Angular 2, and we'll be creating view templates and all to show our contact list. We'll add buttons for delete, for adding contact and all that. Let's go ahead and do that. So for that, I'll be using Angular CLI or command line interface that we'll be using to build our entire client-side project. So go ahead and open a new instance of Node.js CMD. Then go to the project directory. So now we need to install Angular CLI. For that, you'll be using again npm install @angular/CLI. So basically, Angular CLI will help you to provide all the boilerplates or all the files which is necessary to run your client-side Angular application. It will also provide you the core node modules or core modules which we are going to use in our Angular app. Yeah, so npm install has completed and our Angular CLI has been installed. Now we're gonna go ahead with creating a Angular project. So for that you will use ng-new and the folder name where your Angular app will be residing. So ng-new client. I'm gonna name it as client because it's a client-side application. So as I said, it will provide you boilerplates or all the files. So these are the files that will be created using your ng-new command. So you will have a basic component called as app.component, and you will have a basic model app.module where you will be specifying all the modules which you're going to use across the application as well as your components and services. Then we'll have index.html, which is the file that will be rendered in the first place to your web browser, so which we have specified in our public folder. Then we have package.json. There are other files as well. If you see over here, we have protractor for testing, and for linting we have tslint.json, and all the configuration for our Angular CLI is in angular-cli.json. So a couple others are there, so which is not required for now, like don't need to know all of that. So our project has been created successfully. Now let's go inside that very particular folder. Now what we need to create components. Okay, let me just give you a quick walkthrough. So inside our client folder we have source, then app. This is our component, our basic component called as app.component. So if you look at index.html file, which I told you it's going to render in the first place. So here in body we have app-root. So this is a selector or tag which will load our app.component over there. So basically we will have app.component or app component class to be rendered in the first place. So here you can see we have app-root as selector. So for building an Angular 2 application, we use TypeScript as language, which is based on object-oriented features. So here you can see that it's a TypeScript class called as app component. Now we have something called as decorator @component decorator, which tells Angular that this very class is a component, and we have template URL over here, which specify the template for our component, which is over here, and then we have CSS for styling. So let's run this very particular application. So npm start is the command, or you can go ahead with ngserve. Now if you go ahead and 4200, we are having that very particular thing as AppWorks. So basically first our index.html file is rendered, which is calling our app root or app component. So if you check out the app.component template, so in this template we have what we call as interpolation or one-way data binding. So we are binding this value as AppWorks. So let's make it welcome to Edureka. It has been changed. So like for in case of server side application, while we were creating the Express app, we had to run server every time whenever there is a change, and for that we use node mod. Similarly, in our Angular side application, there's a difference is that we don't need to restart our application. It continuously watches for any changes that we make in our source code, and it re-renders or restart the whole application each time. So you can go ahead and check that. So if you see over here, then we had a change over here. So it recompiled it and start the whole application. All these TS files are converted to JavaScript files or transfiled to JavaScript file and then are rendered. Now we need a basic component called as a contacts for listing our contact, as well as there will be a form over there which will have a field for adding contact, then we will have button for deleting contact. So let's go ahead and do all of these. So first of all, we need to create a component. So I'm going to stop it for now. We'll be using ngg or nggenerate for generating component or services. Name of our component will be contacts. We need a service too. So basically it's considered to be a good practice to separate your business logic or your data retrieving or data operation logic in a separate file which we call as a service. Then what we do is we inject those services into our component wherever it is necessary so as to use those services. Now you can see a warning here that service is generated but not provided. So basically whenever you have to use, or in whichever component you have to use the service, you have to provide it in your @component decorator. So there will be a field here called as providers, and we will add the service that we will be creating now. So we have contact.service.ts or contact service class, where we will be writing our business logic or our data retrieving or data operation logic. Then we'll have a contacts component where we'll be creating our template and all the logic behind that. So we'll start with creating our service so that we can retrieve the data first. Then we'll start with creating this contacts.component. Now one more thing we need is we need a schema for our contact. So let us go ahead and make a file called as contact.js or ts that will transpile into JS. So we'll do that. Contact.ts. Now we'll have a class called contact, which will have 4 fields. ID will be of type string. Then we need first name, string, last name, string, and phone. Optional field. Now we need to import our HTTP module for getting all HTTP methods for retrieving data or for sending data, or in other words contacts. So import HTTP. We need headers as well from Angular HTTP. Then we need our contact class to be imported here so that we can use the schema. Import contact from then we need reactive JS operators. Basically we'll be using map operator. So it's done. Now we need to use our HTTP module. So for that, it's done. Now let's create the methods for retrieving contacts. Then we will add contacts, then we will delete contacts. So we will have retrieving contacts. So which is get contacts. And I want to return all the contacts or the contact list which I will be getting through while I'm calling to my API. Then the API URL, you can see over here, this is the signature or syntax of your get method, or signature you can call. Like we will have first argument as a URL string, so we'll have as http://localhost/3000 port number. Then we'll have API, then we have contacts. Then we want to map it to JSON format. So we have our get contact method ready over here. Now we need add contact method. We'll add contact, which will be taking new contact as an argument. So we wanna append the content type in our header, which is so now I want to return the response. And I want to make a call to my add contact API, which is /API/contact. Yeah, I'm gonna copy this very same thing over here. And then I'm gonna pass the new contact, then the headers. We'll map it, the response as JSON. Now we need a delete method. Remember I told you that for deleting a contact we'll be using ID so as to refer that very particular contact in our database. So we need ID as our parameter. Then I'm gonna append or concatenate the ID. So we have our service ready. Now we'll be using all of this method or injecting these services into our component, and then we want to use all of this method to retrieve data and finally do something on it. For example, if you want to show the contact list, so we'll do that. Then for adding contact, we'll use this add contact method. So that's how we'll be doing things. So let's go ahead and create our component. So we'll go to our contacts.component.ts. Private contact service. Yeah, but we need to import it first. So we have contact service from /contact. Yeah. So now we need our contact class or schema. That's it. Now we're gonna initialize our contact service, or we want an instance of that very contact service class so that we can use the method that we have defined there. So for that, what we'll do, we'll pass the argument as private contact service of type contact service class. So this very process is called dependency injection, or that's how we inject our services into our component. And second thing is you need to provide your service so as to use it. Providers. Now let us go ahead and retrieve data. So we'll be putting our retrieving data logic inside ng-on-init method, which will be initiated once your component is being loaded into your browser. So every time you load your component, it will automatically call this very particular method to retrieve all the data. So we'll be having this dot contact service, and we're going to use get contact method. So you can see over here that we have three methods: add contact, delete contact, and get contacts. We're going to use get contacts, and since it will be returning an observable, we need to subscribe that. We want our contacts to be saved as this dot contacts. Now it's showing an error because I haven't made any variable for contacts, so let's go ahead and do that. So it will be contacts of type contact, and it will be an error. Yeah, so we have done that. Let's create some more variable that will be needing later on. We need one. Then we need first name, type string, then last name, then phone number. That's it, guys. Remember I told you that the bootstrap component is app.component. So we need to specify in our app.component that this particular component should be loaded. So we will go to template, and we're going to use app-contacts, because if you go ahead and look at the selector, it's app-contacts. So contacts works. So guys, we have retrieved the data here. Now let's create our template so that we can display this very particular data. So I'm going to go ahead with my contacts.component.html, and so before doing this, we need to refer to our bootstrap style sheet so that we can incorporate it into our template. So we'll go ahead with boot swatch. Then these are the styles that's available which you can use. So I'll go ahead with something superhero. So you can go ahead and click the download and copy this very thing and put it into your HTML or index.html file. So we'll go there, we'll copy this very thing and we'll paste it here, and then we need to write style sheet, and we'll remove this very particular field and we'll copy it here in our href so that it can refer to it. So it's done. Now we can go to our component, and here what we want is we want to iterate over our list. So for that we will be using something called as ng4, which is a structural directive. So div asterisk ng for let contact contacts. So we'll be iterating over contacts using contact variable. So each contact in our contacts array will be retrieved in this very particular variable, and that very variable we will be displaying as a list. So let's go ahead and do that. So we need our div class md3, again a div, closing div tag. So now again we will be using that very interpolation or one-way data binding to display our contact dot first name. Then we need similar columns for our last name and phone number. So it's done. So let's check out our, so we can see over here that our list is being generated. We'll put some more style so that it will look good in the end. So what we'll do right now is we'll add a delete button. Using that we can delete any contact. So we'll go ahead and do that. So for that I'll be copying this very thing again, and I need my put type to be a button. Event click, which will call a method called as delete contact, which we haven't created yet, but we'll do it soon. Now what we want is we'll be referring to that very particular contact using ID, as I told you earlier. So ID. So the value should be delete, and we'll be using a class called as button danger. So it's done. So we have this very particular thing over here. Now what we need is we'll add few breaks so that we are iterating over the list. So yeah, we'll do it later on, these stylings. So now we'll add our delete method over here, which we'll be using, and we also need something called as adding contacts, add method or add contact method. So let's go ahead with our delete first. So we need delete contact. Let's assign ID as any type, or type any. Now, so basically we'll be calling our service again. So this dot contact service dot delete contact, and then we'll passing the ID, and since it returns an observable, we need to subscribe that very particular observable. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now what we need to do is, even if we have deleted the data or the contact from our backend side or from my database, I need to remove it from my contact array as well. This very particular contacts where all the contact has been saved. So we'll go ahead and do that. If the delete operation was successful, then you're gonna iterate over contacts dot length. Then okay, so I'm having an error because I haven't defined the variable contacts. So contacts is equal to this dot contacts So it's done. Now we need to increment our iterator. So if contacts I dot underscore ID is equal to the ID that has been provided to my method, then I want to remove it. Splice. Alright, come on. So our delete contact is done. Now we need to add our new method for our adding contact. So our delete functionality is done. So let's add our add contact method so that we can add more contact and delete them and see if everything is working fine or not. So for that, I'll be using add contact and this. I'll be creating new contact. Here I need first name to be this dot first name. Then I need last name to be this dot last name, and I need phone to be this dot phone. Now I need to provide this particular contact that I have created to my service, or in other words, I need to call the method that is defined in our service. So for that, we'll be going ahead with contact service dot add contact, and we'll be passing this particular variable. We're gonna subscribe it. This dot contact dot push. So we are pushing the new contact into our array. We are having error here. Okay. So it's not able to find any, cannot find name delete contact, and I don't know why we are having this error. Okay, let's check it out. So yeah, so it's done. So this is our add contact method. Now we need to call it from our template. So we're going to modify our template so that we can add a form on top of our class, and which will have three fields, one for name, one for last name, and then one for phone, and then a submit button for adding the contact finally. So for form, we need to use form tag or submit event, and then we'll add contact. So this is the method that we're going to call once the form has been submitted. Close the tag, form tag. Now we need three field guys. So the first one will be of for first name. So let's go ahead and do that. So for that, we'll be using div class equal to form group. Now we need to close this particular tag, and I want my label as first name. Yeah. Now I need input type equal to text. Then we're gonna use something called as ng model for two-way data binding. So whatever changes that we're gonna make there should be reflected in our list as well, where we'll be showing the contact list. So we're gonna use that ng model equals to name equals to first name, class equal to form, So guys, it's done. We have our first field for the first name. Similarly, we need it for our last name and then for our phone number. So we'll edit it as last name, and then we need to write it as last name here. Finally, we need for phone number, so phone number. So we want to put this value to our phone variable. Yeah, so everything is done here. Now we can add something called as required. So if you are not putting that very or filling that very field, then it will pop up a message, or there will be a message popped up stating that you need to fill that very particular form or particular field. So we can use this required here. Now we need one button also for our submit button for submitting our form. Now on top of that, we need to add some heading stating that this is the section for our add contact. So it's done. Now we have everything here. All we need is a horizontal line or a ruler. Yeah. So basically these are add contact form using which we can add our contact, and this our delete button. Everything is there. Let's try my name. We are having it here, but yeah, it's there. And the second thing is that if you are seeing this, that every time we are adding a data, we need to reload it. This is happening because our this very method for retrieving the contacts. So basically, whenever you are retrieving the contact and displaying it, at that very particular time, like your browser never allows you to block your UI. So that is what is happening right now. So what we can do to fix it is we can copy this very particular thing over here, and we're gonna put it inside our add contact to be called just after we have pushed the contact. So now if we go ahead and do that, then yeah, you can see over. Okay, we should add some BR tag so that it looks good or presentable over here. So we're gonna do that here. So this is so far now. Let's check our delete button. It's working as well. So our whole application is working. Let me give you a quick walkthrough or a quick recap so that we can refresh all the things that we did for creating this very particular main application. So what we did, we started with our server-side coding, where we had our app.js or entry point file, where we imported all the modules that we required for our application. Then we used middleware for applying cars and a body parser to parse the JSON data. And then we put all our routes in a separate file called as route.js, which is over here. Now, there we created routes for each CRUD operation, and then we created schema for a database for contact. Like for example, first name will be like this, last name will be this, and phone this. Now we have our client side or client folder. where we started with creating our component. So this is our component. And then we had a service called as contact.service, where we have mentioned all the data operation logic. And we have injected this very service into the component that we need to use or we want to use. So that's it, guys. This was the whole Angular application and Express and MongoDB. So we have created our main app successfully. I hope you find this whole session to be informative. So you will find this particular recording into your LMS. You can download it. And in case of any query, you can go ahead and ask those queries or put those queries to our support team, which is available for 24/7. And in other cases, you can also bring your doubts in the next class. So thank you for attending the session. Thanks. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply to them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to our Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!